Winfield Scott Hancock was born on February 14, 1824, near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was named after Winfield Scott, a famous U.S. Army general of the time. Hancock graduated from West Point in 1844 and spent the next several decades as a military officer. He was a lieutenant during the Mexican-American War, taking part in it from July 1847 to February 1848. Hancock served in the Army of the Potomac, the Union Army's main army for the Eastern Theater of the American Civil War, starting in the fall of 1861 as a brigadier general. He played a critical role in the Battle of Williamsburg on May 5, 1862, earning the nickname Superb, which stuck with him throughout the war. He was involved in major battles like Antietam, Fredericksburg, and Chancellorsville throughout 1862 and the first half of 1863. Hancock's most well-known moment of his military career came during the Battle of Gettysburg in July 1863. He was the commanding Union officer during the first day of the battle on July 1st, until General George Meade took over early the next morning. On July 2nd, Hancock's forces formed the center of the westward-facing Union line along Cemetery Ridge. He effectively repulsed attacks directed at his area of command, while also supporting the Union defenses at critical points where fierce fighting was occurring, like the wheat field on the southwestern portion of the Union line or East Cemetery Hill on the northern side. On the last day of the battle, July 3rd, Hancock's forces bore the brunt of the massive Confederate attack against Cemetery Ridge called Pickett's Charge, which they were able to effectively repel. However, he was severely wounded during the fighting that day. The injury continued to weaken him during the rest of the war. Hancock was involved with much of the major fighting in Virginia in 1864, including the Overland Campaign of May and June, and the Siege of Petersburg, Virginia, during the summer and fall until he gave up active field command in November. He led an important breakthrough against the strong Mule Shoe Confederate defensive line during the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse on May 12th. In 1865, Hancock oversaw the execution of conspirators involved with the assassination of President Lincoln. He also supervised one of 5 administrative units set up during Reconstruction, the 5th Military District covering Texas and Louisiana between November 1867 and March 1869. Hancock also spent 2 stints of time on the Great Plains. The first came in 1866 and 1867 when Hancock was given control of the Department of the Missouri, covering Kansas, Missouri, and the Colorado and New Mexico territories. In early April 1867, Hancock set out from Fort Riley in north central Kansas with 1,400 men in order to meet the native peoples on the open plains and attempt to use the threat of force to make them align with the settlers' expansionist desires related to the prime hunting grounds in western Kansas. The campaign lasted until mid-May. One key moment during the expedition came on April 19th, when Hancock ordered the burning of an abandoned Cheyenne and Oglala Lakota village in western Kansas and the possessions within it, greatly angering the native peoples. 1866 had been a relatively peaceful year along the Kansas frontier, but this, along with Hancock's militant attitude towards the native peoples, sparked a number of raids on travelers and transportation infrastructure along the Great Platte River Road, Smoky Hill Trail, and more broadly, western Kansas, Nebraska, and what is now northwestern Colorado by native warriors between May and September. There were also a number of armed conflicts between U.S. Army forces and native warriors that summer, like the battle at Fort Wallace and the Kidder Fight or Kidder Massacre, both in June. The second was from May 1869 to January 1873, when he was commander of the Department of the Dakota, controlling all military forces and infrastructure in Minnesota and the Dakota and Montana territories. In January 1870, U.S. Army forces committed the Marias Massacre or Piegan Massacre in what is now northern Montana, killing around 200 of the native Piegan Blackfeet people. Hancock played an active role in Democratic Party politics from the late 1860s through 1880. He was uniquely talented in that he could both pander to Southern whites and promote the concept of states' rights, while also having strong anti-secessionist credentials due to his military exploits during the Civil War. He was a strong contender for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination in 1868 and a minor contender for it in 1876, eventually winning it in 1880. Major topics of contention during the 1880 general election campaign against the Republican candidate, James A. Garfield, were related to the reputation of the two candidates, the two parties' previous history with secession, the Civil War, and Reconstruction, the use of tariffs, and Chinese immigration. Hancock and the Democrats swept the South but failed to win any of the swing states in the Northeast or Midwest, leading to their loss in the closest election ever in terms of the popular vote, with a margin of 0.11%. In the last years of his life, Hancock managed the funeral for former President Ulysses S. Grant and its procession. Hancock passed away on February 9, 1886, in New York City.